Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm Inside to Legends. Today is Friday, January 30th, 2026, and today we're going to talk about this poll coming out of the state of Michigan that has Democrats ahead in the Senate race ahead of 2026. The reason this is so important is because Michigan has been a state, of course it's a swing state, as you know, that honestly has not been looking that good for the Democratic Party ahead of the 2026 midterms because there is a Senate race in the state of Michigan in 2026 because incumbent Senator Gary Peters is retiring and it's a toss-up. It is a competitive Democratic primary and a very competitive general election. So much so that Republicans, even in this national environment that 2026 is shaping to be, Republican Mike Rogers, he's been doing pretty good in polls up until now of this Senate race. I mean, look, disregarding this latest poll, this is the Emerson College poll. We're going to talk about this more later in this video. But other polls, again, Haley Stevens, who is the very moderate Democrat, who is arguably the best Democrat for the general election. She is up, but she is not up by much. Once again, disregarding this latest poll, which we'll talk about soon, in the other latest poll, they were tied with Haley Stevens and Mike Rogers. But before that, she was behind by 2 points. Then she was up by 2 points. Then she was behind by 7 points. Then she was up by 1 point. Then she was behind by 6 points. She was close. This is a race. This is a very close race in a swing state in the Donald Trump midterm. It's most likely going to go to the Democratic Party, but it is a close race. And like I said, Haley Stevens is the best candidate for the Democratic Party. There's two other candidates in the Democratic primary. I'm not saying that Haley Stevens would be the best candidate to be the senator, but I'm just saying polling wise, she performs the best. But Mallory McMorrow, who is arguably the candidate who's favored to win the Democratic primary, who's favored to actually who's favored to be the Democratic nominee for the Senate race in 2026 in its latest poll. I know these other two polls had Haley Stevens ahead, but the overall sentiment is that Mallory McMorrow is ahead, and she's leading in a couple polls, but not by many. Once again, this latest poll they were talking about right now, Emerson College, she is ahead. She's ahead by 3 points, but the other latest polls, she's behind by 4. She's behind by 6. One poll, she was up by 1. Then she was behind by 7. Then she was behind by 4. In Michigan, a swing state that should be going solidly to the Democratic Party, Democrats have not been looking too great in the Senate race until now. Actually, one more person, Abdul El Sayed, in this latest poll, he's tied, but before that, he's behind by 6 points, by 3 points, by 14 points, by 6 points. He is by far the worst candidate performance-wise in this election, disregarding your personal opinions on this primary. He's pretty much objectively the worst candidate electorally for the Democratic Party, and that's what it says in these polls. But this latest poll has all of the Democratic candidates, even Abdul El Sayed, the weakest one, tied. They have the other two candidates up in the Senate race against Mike Rogers. Mike Rogers ran for Senate in 2026, and he came extremely close. Yes, he underperformed Donald Trump because as Donald Trump was winning the state in the same ballot that Donald Trump was winning the state by 1.4 points, he was losing the state. Yes, only by 0.34 points, but he did underperform Donald Trump by about 2 points. And if he's losing in 2024, who knows what's going to happen in 2026? And that is what this poll is saying. And I assume that we're going to see more polls like this the closer we get to the midterms. The more engaged people get into the midterm elections, the more polls we're going to get like this. Polls that would seem like an outlier, but are going to become the norm. Because as people are uneducated about elections, their biases slip through in polls. Someone in Michigan who a low propensity voter in Michigan might say, "Oh, okay, Mike Rogers, sure, I'll vote for him." But getting closer to the election, they might say, "Oh, I've seen a bunch of stuff about this Mike Rogers. I'm not going to vote for him." And I think that's what we're seeing in this poll, and what we're going to see in more polls to come. That Democrats that the closer we get to the midterms, the more these Democratic candidates get their name out there, get their messages out there, get their messages against Republicans and against Donald Trump out there, which is going to start favoring them in polls. And their hope is that this should influence the election in 2026. If that makes sense. And what I want to talk about is 2020, actually, not the 2020 presidential election. Joe Biden won the state by 3 points. It was his best state in the 2020 election. He won Nevada by 2.4. He won Arizona by 0.3, Georgia by 0.2, Pennsylvania by 1.2, which is the state he was from. I may add, Joe Biden was from Pennsylvania. He was winning Wisconsin by 0.2, 0.6. But he was winning Michigan by about 3 points. It was his best state. However, fast forward to 2024, it was Kamala Harris's nearly worst state. Not worst state. No, what I mean is it was her worst state relative to 2024. Let me show you what I mean. In 2020 and 2024, disregarding Nevada and Arizona, because those are two states demographically and culturally are completely different from the Great Lakes states, from Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia and North Carolina for that matter. And they shifted farther to the right, but we're going to talk about these states right now. Georgia shifted by 2.4 to the right. North Carolina by 1.9. Pennsylvania by a little bit less than 3. Wisconsin by 1.5. Michigan, however, though, it shifted to the right by over 4 points. Over 4 points to the right. It is a pretty large shift. And the reason this is because of Arabic voters. Arab voters. I'm so sorry if I'm getting that wrong. I think it's Arab voters. But the Arab population in the state of Michigan is the highest in the country, by far. Honestly, New Jersey, who has the second highest population of Arabs in the United States, has 1.18%. Michigan, however, has 2.1. Michigan has a fairly large has a fairly large Arab demographic population. And the reason the state has shifted to the right so much is because of October 7th and the Israel-Hamas war. And voters in Michigan, that used to be the best state for the Democratic Party. It was the best swing state in 2020 for the Democrats, became one of the worst states for the Democrats in 2024. Well, I mean, it was actually the second closest swing state, but relative to the shift from 2020 to 2024, it was one of the Democrats' worst states, and that's because of the Israel-Hamas war. Voters, specifically Arab voters in Michigan, disapproved of Joe Biden's handling of the Israel-Hamas conflict, and they believed that Donald Trump would do better. And to his credit, for a time, he did. These polls were during the height of the talk and the ceasefire of the Israel-Hamas war. However, as that's gotten farther away, after that ceasefire has been broken, after the war is continuing on, the latest polls, he's back in the disapproval of this issue by about 10 points. And midterms are a referendum on the President of the United States. And if mainly because of the Israel-Hamas war, not mainly, but the Israel-Hamas war being a large factor in the swinging of the 2020 to 2024 election, if it shifted by over 4 points to the right because of the Israel-Hamas war, because they figured Donald Trump would do better, now in 2026, when they see that Donald Trump is not doing better, that he's doing just as bad as Joe Biden on the Israel-Hamas war, those voters may shift. And as this poll is showing, these voters may shift back to the left, back to the Democrats, and vote for the Democrats in 2026 to show their discontent with Donald Trump in his handling specifically of the Israel-Hamas war, which, in my opinion, that's one of the main reasons we're seeing this shift in this one poll. Now, this poll, yes, it could be an outlier. It could be all these other polls could be correct, and this could just be an outlier that doesn't mean anything. This race is actually extremely close, and we have no idea how it's going to go in 2026. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. But my take from this is that the closer we get to the midterms and the more discontent voters get with Donald Trump, with Donald Trump, the more the race in polls and how the actual election is going to turn in 2026 is going to shape. And the trends that I'm seeing, in my opinion, these trends are trending towards the Democratic Party. They're trending towards the left. They're trending away from the Republican Party. Because as you can see, these numbers actually aren't that different. Haley Stevens is at 47%. In these other polls, she was at 44, 44, 45. Mallory McMorrow, who's at 46 in this poll, in the other polls that she was winning, she was at 46. She was at 43, 42, 42. Some had lower, but the point is that the actual margin for the Democrats isn't shifting that much, but the margin for the Republicans is shifting downwards. Mike Rogers, 42%, 43%, 43%. In these previous polls, 42%, 42%, 41%. The point is, how do I say this? Yes, Democrats are doing better, but Mike Rogers is also doing worse. It's not just the shift to the Democratic Party, it's a shift away from the Republican Party, if that makes sense. Okay, anyway, I've been talking for too long. Actually, one more thing. This is the Senate map as of right now. If Democrats were to actually taking this poll into account, if they were to actually lock in states like Michigan, they would lock in states like Georgia, they would lock in states like North Carolina and Maine. They would only need 2 more seats to get to a Senate majority in 2026. Assuming Alaska flips blue, as polls are saying, I mean, that's Michigan, as polls are saying, Alaska, the Democratic candidate, Mayor Petrillo, may be favored to flip Alaska. This video is not about Alaska, but the point is Alaska may flip blue in 2026. If this does happen, if they lock in Michigan, which in my opinion is, other than Alaska, the most swingy of the swing states in 2026, they would only need 1 more seat to win the Senate majority. If they won in Ohio with Sharon Brown, if they won in Texas with James Tallarico, Democrats have a chance to flip the Senate majority, and that all goes through the state of Michigan, locking in the state of Michigan, and that is why this poll and the overall national environment, specifically in the state of Michigan, is shifting to the left, and that is why I believe that Democrats may win the Senate majority in 2026. Okay, that's enough of my yapping. That's enough of my talking about this topic. What are your thoughts on this topic? Do you think Democrats have a decent shot in this Senate race? What are your opinions? I encourage you to comment suggestions for future video ideas. If you enjoyed this tutorial, I encourage you to like the video, to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I upload election news every single day. And yeah, hope you have a great day.